Hello watch enthusiasts. Now today I'd like to talk about some of the most rugged watches on the market, and some of the best value rugged watches on the market, because I'm aware that a great many people like to wear watches in really every situation, and like myself, one can often worry about damaging a watch, and I've received various emails about this. Therefore I would like to talk about some very good options as far as very rugged timepieces go, from very simple watches through to far more complex watches at higher prices, that will resist the knocks and the wear of a very active sort of lifestyle. Now, one point which I would like to make in this video is that I won't be talking about the Casio G-Shock. And the Casio watches have been extremely successful as very robust watches, but in this video I wanted to focus on some options for those who would prefer an analog style of display on their watch, or a more traditional looking watch. And this may not appeal to everyone, but certainly I feel that there is a market for a timepiece which is traditional in its ways, and also has a much longer lifespan in terms of batteries and so on, than, for example, a digital watch of that nature. Now, the first watch which I'd like to talk about is the military Navigator from Marathon. And Marathon are a brand which has long been very successful with the armed forces, as it's been used by the US armed forces, the Canadian armed forces, and the Israeli armed forces, among many others, in order to produce watches which can really withstand the daily rigours of the military lifestyle. Now, the case of this watch is 41mm and asymmetric, as you can see, to protect that crown placed at the 3 o'clock position, which has long been a form used by the military watches, from watches made by Benrus in the past through Precister. So actually it does make sense to have this format. But I feel for the price of £170 to £215, this watch offers quite remarkable value because you get a tritium illuminated dial and bezel. And this is to say that you have, rather than luminova, you have tubes of hydrogen-3, which happens to be radioactive, although it isn't radioactive enough to cause any harm to the body in this case. But what this allows is that the hands and the dial, and also the bezel, will in fact glow for approximately 25 years, which is the half-life of this particular material, making it a very practical option if you're going to use the watch in testing circumstances. Of course, the case of this watch is a plastic composite, as is the Hesalite crystal, but apart from the case back, which is of course steel, but the purpose of this is to make a watch which is extremely light on the wrist, and really you can forget about, and it adds to the durability of the watch. And of course, for this sort of price, this is a watch which you're going to knock around a bit. Of course, this can't be refinished, but for this price, I think it offers the best a combination of durability with comfort and practicality. While the watch is only water resistant to 60 metres, it is still suitable for the daily rigours of life, such as swimming and washing your hands even, simply because it really is a military piece designed to withstand damage from the elements. But where this watch really shines in terms of resistance to pressures is in its negative and pressure change resistance. So this watch is resistant to the rigours of a paratrooper's life. So this is designed to resist any changes in pressure that would be incurred from jumping out of an aeroplane, effectively. So it does show the build quality going into these pieces for the very reasonable price, I feel, that these watches are offered for. Now, the movement inside this watch is an ETA F06, which is a quartz high-torque movement, which is designed to be particularly resilient in this case to shocks and other damage of that nature. But also it does feature several features which would normally be seen on more expensive quartz movements, notably the fact that it has an end-of-life indicator that advances the second hand once every 4 seconds to show that the battery is in need of a change and will soon run out. Similarly, it's also accurate to about half a second a day, which is very reasonable, I feel. Now, the next watch on this list is really rather a predictable choice. This is the Victorinox Inox, or Inox, depending on how you pronounce it. And this is very much a watch which, in its steel guise at least, is about as utilitarian as watches come in terms of durability, without really any concern for anything else. So the watch is a 43mm watch and is substantially heavy due to the size of this watch and its very thick case, with a very thick protective bezel protecting that sapphire crystal on the front. And in this video I'm really referring to the steel version, because at between £300 and £400, I feel that it's particularly good value, considering what it offers. Although I do feel that if someone did want something a little bit lighter, then perhaps the titanium version would be a best choice. Though that said, it is more expensive, and therefore I do feel the steel version is the best value model out there. Now, what's so impressive about this watch is, whereas the Marathon is very much a watch which is durable on your wrist, This watch is durable in really any situation. Now the watch features, of course, a very large 43mm case, which does a very, very good job of protecting the various components from impacts. Notably, the watch can be dropped from 10 metres onto a hard floor without any damage to the movement or indeed any too substantial damage to the case. Similarly, the crown is almost entirely enclosed within its crown guards to give it protection and also to allow it to be protected from any sort of shocks that might misalign it and cause it to be useless really as a crown. Similarly, the dial is very heavily loomed, but very minimally decorated with text, making it very clear to read and legible in the dark, as well as the movement of the date to 4:30, making the 3 o'clock position still have loom. Of course, this watch is extremely durable to really anything. It's 200 metres water resistant. Also, the case has been tested by driving a tank over it. I kid you not. This really has been tested. And similarly, the watch is resistant to large electromagnetic fields, which would normally effectively destroy a mechanical watch. But in this case, this quartz watch is very resistant to that influence. Now, what I also find rather interesting about this watch is it's available with rather a large bumper, sort of a plastic case that can be put over the case itself to give it added protection from scratches and bumps, which though the watch will be able to survive, these may leave marks on the surface of the steel, which of course could really spoil the watch for someone, and I certainly understand this, where I like to avoid scratches on my watches, though I do feel this watch is a watch which is really owned for the sake of wearing it rather than babying it. Of course, this watch is actually quite well decorated due to the fact that it has polished and brushed surfaces, which are well finished for this price, which is impressive, frankly, considering the fact that this watch is designed to be a durable, rugged piece. Much the same is true for the dial, which has applied indices and a rather nice lifted chapter ring to give the dial altogether more depth and make it more interesting to look at. Now, the next watch on this list takes rather a leap in price to the £1,000 mark. And the reason for this is that I find that actually the Inox and the Marathon offer superb quality relief for that sort of price. But then above that, actually, one has to reach quite a long way before one finds technology which really does make a watch more durable than they are. And this comes in the form of the Damasco DA38, or indeed the 36, depending on the model you go for. But these are fundamentally bezel-less pilot's watches, and offer some quite substantially impressive features for the money. And I will talk about the bezel version of these watches as well, but that's all included within this watch, if you will. And this is effectively a watch which is a traditional pilot's watch, but brought into the 21st century with a nickel-free, bead-blasted, ice-hardened case. And this is a proprietary style of steel made by Damasco, which is hardened to 710 Vickers, which is substantially harder than the normal 200 or so Vickers of steel. So this makes the watch very, very scratch resistant, and this is a hardening that goes right through the metal to its base, making it entirely scratch resistant and not susceptible to the bumps one can sometimes find on surface finishes. Now, the reason why this metal isn't used elsewhere is because it's very, very susceptible to magnetism. But in order to compensate for this in this watch, there is an inner cage in the watch, if you will, a soft iron core, which makes the watch effectively anti-magnetic to 1000 Gauss, which really does deal with that problem very, very well, making this an extremely reliable sort of watch because it's both water resistant to 100 meters, but also features that additional protection from magnetism and from scratches. This watch also features innovation in the crown, where the crown is actually self-lubricating so that it doesn't wear itself down over time, which is again a very practical feature for a watch which is to be used in the field very, very regularly, and with little concern for its well-being. Of course, we also have a very standard movement in this watch, but very well decorated in this case with Geneva stripes and gilding. And this is a shockproof and anti-magnetic version of the ETA 2836, which is effectively a 2824 with a day-date complication, which I feel is something nice to see on this watch, because it adds to that practicality as a pilot's watch. Additionally, being a pilot's watch, this watch does feature a crystal which won't pop out in the case of any negative or reduced pressure. Of course, negative pressure isn't possible in this case, but bear with me in that this crystal is designed to remain in place even under large changes in pressure, for example, ejecting from a plane cockpit. And of course, this allows the watch to remain functional and, as you can see, extraordinarily legible with a very heavily loomed dial under these circumstances. Now, additionally, in the form of the DA46 comes a watch which has a very similar 40mm case with the same features, including the anti-magnetism, the pressure resistance, and also the heavy scratch resistance, in addition to the fact that it has gaskets which are made specifically to be UV resistant. But in this case, the watch also comes with a bidirectional pilot's bezel, which can be extremely practical for some people. And this watch comes in at about the £1,200 mark, so it is a substantial step up in price. But I feel this is very much worth it, considering the additional functionality of a bezel, notably being able to time things. But also, instead of the timing bezel, one can buy this watch with a 12-hour bezel, making this watch both a practical watch for timing things, but also between time zones for keeping time, or also for timing longer periods of time with hours involved. Now, the final watch on this list is from Sinn, and this is the U200. And the reason why I've chosen this watch to show on the video, and indeed really all of Sinn's watches are superb timepieces, then there's really no question there. But the reason why I've included this one is that whereas the U1 is a 1,000-meter diver, but doesn't include the AR dehumidifying technology in these watches, and several other technologies that are only seen on the Eisensatzmesser models in their lineup, I felt this was the best value model in their line, which differentiates itself sufficiently from the Damasco models. Because I found that it would be really silly to show you another pilot's watch in a similar format to the Damasco, because those Damascos offer such superb value for money. Therefore, I feel this watch at £1,750 is one of the most interesting models in the dive watch area in terms of technology and durability. Now, the reason why I choose this watch is that it features a great many technologies. Notably, the bezel on this watch is hardened with Sinn's tegmented technology, which is that it's hardened to 1500 Vickers, which is an incredibly high hardness for a bezel of this nature. And the case and that bezel is already made out of German submarine steel, which is a particularly corrosion-resistant steel and is also the most anti-magnetic steel there is in the world, which makes this watch extremely resistant to that aspect of damage to a watch, especially in a mechanical piece like this. Of course, it would be silly to ignore the fact that the U200 is water-resistant to 2,000 metres, and this is a remarkable depth, really, for a watch of this nature. And of course, for a 37mm watch like this, though admittedly the bezel does sit slightly further out than that 37mm, making it really a 39 or 40mm wear. But I felt this watch, for a watch of that size, which is really comfortable for all wearers, due to its proportions, whether you have a small wrist or a very large wrist, whereas things like the U1 and the U2 at 44mm can be difficult to wear for those with smaller wrists. But I feel this is a very impressive depth to have for a watch like this, and really is demonstrative of how Sinn protect their watches from moisture, notably the fact that they use their own oils which are more resistant to this, and in this watch's case features AR dehumidifying technology, which means the watch is filled with inert gas to avoid moisture damaging the internal components. And similarly, it has copper sulfate capsules which turn blue and absorb moisture, which means the inside of the case is extraordinarily dry, which is the perfect running conditions for the movement. Similarly, this watch is extraordinarily legible, with a very, very clear dial design, as is prescribed in their Eisensatzmesser or Mission Timer line, due to the fact it has these very elegant yet extraordinarily legible hands and an extremely clear dial with a very utilitarian design, as is always the case with Sinn, but while retaining the very typical and really uncopied nature of Sinn designs. Now, I would like to say one thing about this watch, which has been asked by many people, and notably a lot of people have asked about the Sinn U1 as well, and that's a question as to why it doesn't have a helium escape valve for a watch which is rated to this depth. And the reason for this is that in this day and age, really with modern seals on watches, actually it isn't really necessary to have one of these valves anymore. In the past, a great deal of helium would get in because the seals and gaskets weren't as high quality as today's. But in truth, in this day and age, one really doesn't need the valves, despite what advertising may say. And of course, it is helpful to have the valves if the seal, for example, is defective. But in this case, these seals are very, very high quality and really are designed to withstand these troubles and rigours of a professional diver's life. Now, I'll conclude the video here, because I feel I've covered all the most notable models which really offer the best value for features, despite some being expensive like the Sinn. This does offer fantastic features for the money, and certainly is a watch which wouldn't disappoint anyone who needed a rugged, resilient watch for hard times. But before I finish this video, I would like to point out that I have in fact ordered a Sinn, and it's not a Sinn I've talked about previously in depth, but it's owned by several other people, prominent individuals on YouTube, and has become quite a popular model. But it's a model which was released at Baselworld, so I'll let you guess as to which model it was. And I was on the verge of buying a U1, but in the end I didn't, in favour of this other model. So I'll leave that with you, and do please try and guess in the comments down below. But I'll end the video here, so thank you very much for watching, and do please like, share and subscribe if you did enjoy the video and would like to enjoy more content on the channel in future. So thank you very much for watching. This is Sam on the Watch Guy, over and out.